we wanted to touch a bit of the past, the present, and the future. And as much as we really do need to go a lot deeper into a look at the past, we don't have any more time for that. And so from the focus on the apathy of the past, we have to now deal with the activism of the present moment, what we have to face and what we have to do now. And so the theme shifts from Norman Manley, the Federalist, to the Caribbean in crisis, because that's the present reality. And when I was speaking with Professor Lewis, who we're going to hear from in a minute, and I asked him on the first conversation, he said, I don't want to talk. I want to do something. Because I'd asked, and he specifically wanted to do something about Cuba. Cuba is on everybody's mind in the Caribbean. We don't like what are going on. And the fact is that if we don't act in the present, then what is the present moment for? And so we deliberately shifted our second session, or planned it, so that our focus on the two most outstanding areas of crisis in the Caribbean, we focus them with a view to what can we do now. This is not a time for theory and a time for highfalutin projections into the future. So these two sessions will be very much planning sessions. It will be sessions focused on what basically can be done. And the first session will focus on Cuba, and the next session focuses on Haiti. And I'm very much aware that the time is out of whack, so let's get on with it. And I'm going to welcome to the front table the two persons who will be guiding us into what can be done for Cuba. First of all, ladies first, the expert. Please welcome to the head table Her Excellency, Ambassador Lopéz Larroque, and she is the ambassador for Cuba in Jamaica, and the expert that will guide us in our concerns. A lot has been in the news at Nogoso. I had to ask the embassy to guide my mind, because a lot of the things that I was hearing, that was not quite accurate. And so we're going to welcome you, Your Excellency, to come. And we're also going to welcome to the head table Professor Rupert Lewis. And I am going to leave it to them, all format, everything. We just want to have a conversation. How can we help Cuba now?
Thank you for inviting me, YeKengalé, and for the efforts you have put into organizing this event and for the discussions that we have had. I'd like to acknowledge Mrs. Glyn Manley and any other member of the Manley family those connected with the foundation. Respect to you and the family. Ambassador, glad to share the table with you. Yes, when we had the discussion, I was focusing a lot on the need for solidarity and the importance of whatever little we have. How do we share with our Cuban brothers and sisters? Is with the West Indian community in Havana, in Guantanamo, in Cuba, which stemmed from research that I did in Cuba in the 1970s. So for the past 20 years, I have adopted a Cuban family who I support on a monthly basis. I've also assisted people in acquiring property here in Jamaica, people who have done well with the educational system. So I feel that there is a dimension to the solidarity that we are capable of. Hundreds of students in Jamaica and throughout the Caribbean have been educated by the Cubans. Doctors with very profitable practices in Jamaica who received virtually free education. So I have a small network. It's very small. But through that little network, one of my colleagues who taught in the United States, now is retired in Jamaica, mobilized her students to send assistance to Cuban families. And one of the things they do is to the person in Havana, an academic, a professor with whom the ambassador is connected, Samuel Fourier Davis, who was her professor in Cuba. I knew Samuel over many years. So Samuel then is a professor there, but he facilitates the purchase of groceries for groups. So I think we need to think more pragmatically. And our diaspora, which I want to comment on in my presentation, because I do have a formal presentation that I want to make. The remittance, and I consider my remittance a pittance, but it's a pittance that goes to assist people with things. So that I think there needs to be initiatives at the personal level and at the level of the church, because there are church communities in Jamaica, church communities in Cuba. There needs to be, I heard Paul Burke talk about raising funds for the alternative energy supplies and so on, all of which are important. So at the time that I spoke with YeKengalé, my mind was consumed with what can be done. However, what can be done takes place in a context, and therefore the pittance and the remittance takes place within a broader political framework. So I wanted to also spend some time in analyzing an aspect of that political framework which I find missing in the discussion about Cuba. So it's not about Cuba because we have the brilliant ambassador here to speak firsthand on Cuba. My thing is more a perspective, and it comes back to Norman Manley, because Norman Manley's 1968 November speech was in response to Black Power. And I want to remind you all of that relationship that he had. So let me begin, and I hope that YeKengalé will allow me. Race is very much part at the center of global crises in the world today. And I want to focus single-mindedly on this factor as a critical but often continued to shape power politics. It shaped the politics that Norman Manley was involved in. When Trevor talks about self-government, Norman refers to in that November 1968 to the empowerment of the black masses. It has affected our psychology, ideologies, cultural and economic relations today. The late Jamaican philosopher Charles Mills, in his book Racial Contract, 1997, states, and I quote, "White supremacy is the unnamed political system that has made the modern world what it is today." This is not an imagined system, my friends. Mills emphasizes, quote, "We live in a world which has been foundationally shaped by the realities of European domination and the gradual consolidation of global white supremacy." We don't want any better example of global white supremacy than the Trump administration. Everybody has seen his conduct in the White House with the president of South Africa and how racist and rude he was. So that we now have before us a U.S. president in the 250 years of the United States who is explicit and unapologetic in his racial approach. And this is not ideology, this has to do with policy. When he guts out USAID, it means that people in South Africa and elsewhere who benefit from health programs, the HIV programs and so on, who benefit from other social benefits and health benefits, all of that is cut out. So race has policy implications. Today is not only the anniversary of Norman Manley, it is the 250th anniversary of American independence. The 13 colonies, British colonies, like Jamaica and Barbados, from British imperialism. Let me quote from a document written by Frederick Douglass. I consider Norman Manley, Michael Manley, ancestral figures in the same way that I consider Frederick Douglass ancestral figures, forefathers of national struggles, anti-colonial struggles. And Frederick Douglass made this speech on July 4th, 1852, quoting Psalm 137, with which every Jamaican should be familiar. "By the rivers of Babylon, where we sat down, yea, we wept when we remembered Zion. And they who wasted us required of us mirth, saying, Sing us one of the songs of Zion. How can we sing the Lord's song in a strange land?" Quote, Douglass asks a poignant question, and I quote, and this is Douglass, self-taught in terms of reading, writing, self-taught. "Is it not astonishing that while we are plowing, planting, and reaping, using all kinds of mechanical tools, erecting houses, constructing bridges, building ships, working in metals of brass, iron, copper, silver, and gold, that while we are reading, writing, and ciphering, acting as clerks, merchants, and secretaries, having among us lawyers, doctors, ministers, poets, and authors, editors, orators, and teachers, that while we are engaged in all manners of enterprises common to other men, digging gold in California, capturing the whale in the Pacific, feeding sheep and cattle on the hillside, living, moving, acting, thinking, planning, living in families as husbands, wives, and children, and above all, confessing and worshiping the Christian's God and looking hopefully for life and immortality beyond the grave, we are called upon to prove that we are men." This question of our humanity, 1852, Douglass, and it comes up again 2026. For African Americans, for the African continent, for the diasporas, that question of our humanity constantly comes up. Edna Manley, in her artistic work, gave expression, creative expression to that humanity. You will remember, those who have seen it, her sculpture, Negro Aroused, which was a poignant statement coming out of the 1838 rebellion. However, time doesn't stand still. Imperial restrictions on political liberties were only modified in India in 1947, in China in 1949, and China was colonized by the British and by Japan. In the 1930s, that war with Japan was an anti-colonial war. And whilst people conceive of it was the Communist Party of China that led their anti-colonial revolution. The Ghana in 1957, and this was followed by the eventual independence of over 50 countries in Africa, and of course the civil rights movement in 1965 gave full voting rights to African Americans. As Trevor pointed out, our adult suffrage came in 1944. So that in all these, this is the era, that particular era, 40s, 60s, the era in which Norman Manley and the national movement, and I stress this because Jamaica had a national movement, the sense of which has been lost to subsequent generation. Why Norman Manley went out into the field and did all the work that he did, it had to do with a national strength, the national movement and the national spirit, which in that 68 speech he said was dying in Jamaica in the late 1960s. I want to shift now to the question of political community. The federal experiment was an experiment in political community, regional political community. But we all belong to several political communities. The nation is one such, but when the nation state, there are multiple ethnic communities. For example, in Trinidad, Guyana, and Suriname, ethnic identification is crucial in shaping political preferences. So, nation state, but there are multiple political communities, multiple types of identification that human beings have and develop. Another significant political communities we found in our diasporas. And in this era, the Jamaican diaspora in Canada, the United States, Britain, are crucial repositories of political strength. When I talk to some Jamaican women who are in New York and who voted for Mamdani, you would think that you are in a non-Trump world. Because these women in their 40s, young Jamaican women who are in that area, some in businesses, some in nursing, all kinds of different activities, but full of a lot of enthusiasm and political vision. And that, in addition to the remittances, their political importance in a period when the Caribbean political movements are down and the progressive movement has been, is still yet to rebuild itself. Those are legacies that I pay a lot of attention to. The 14 parishes and the data on remittance in Jamaica. Remittances flow to all 14 parishes and in small amounts on a regular basis. It is the Caribbean diaspora in New York that reimagined modern Pan-Africanism. And if you consider Marcus Garvey's role, it was only Marcus Garvey, it was people like Domingo, who was the head of the Jamaica Progressive League in New York, one of the important tributaries of the 1938 formation of the People's National Party. That Jamaican diaspora was crucial. And these people, after World War I, reimagined a different kind of global political community, which Garvey was able to organize in some 40 countries. So political community is a dynamic. It's not a static thing. It can be created, but it takes a lot of effort to build political communities to achieve agendas. In that post-World War I period, Norman Manley was a combatant in the First World War, and his brother Roy tragically was killed in that war, and that was a grief that he carried with him for the rest of his life. I want to now turn to just a brief comment on technology and racism in the world today. And technology, the relationship between Elon Musk, white South Africa, and Trump is a strategic link that intends not only to exert dominance on the world, but also to colonize outer space. We have to appreciate the vision which is emerging. And in understanding vision emerging, we also have to have our own vision for what we want for ourselves. If we don't have a defined strategic vision, then we fall prey to responding to other people's agendas. And this is really the point I want to make before concluding on Norman Manley and race and the 1968 speech. That speech was, let me just quote from Norman Manley and the speech. Norman Manley says to the party conference that he's not giving a regular speech on inventory of what was done in the last year. He says that wherever you go in Jamaica today, and indeed on the university campus, you will sooner or later hear the expression Black Power. And the entire conference burst out in applause. It is a phrase, Norman says, with deep meaning, and it arouses strong emotion. It evokes deep feelings throughout the world, and especially in America and Africa. And others here in this conference will deal with it fully. So that the conference went on to discuss this important movement. So Norman is between two movements of black people, the 38 and the 68. He goes on to say, he asks the conference, what does it mean when the Governor General is a black man? Where the Prime Minister, Hugh Shearer, is dark brown. And I myself, the leader of the opposition, am a brown man, and I'm the grandson of a black woman, and I am proud of it. I want you to just pause for a moment to understand the significance of this. The significance of this is that in the People's National Party leadership at the time, there was hostility to black power by some of the leaders. Some of the leaders shared the same view as Hugh Shearer. There was ambivalence because these are questions which the educated middle class and the brown middle class did not want to discuss. Rex Nettleford, in that book, famous book, Mirror, Mirror, provides a full discussion of what that meant. Now, one of the differences between then and now is that the progressive movement has been decimated. And we have had 30 to 40 years of neoliberalism. The consequences of that 40 years is with us. Final point, geopolitical changes have exerted a huge influence on Cuba. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 and the consequences then to 2026. The election of Trump, another huge geopolitical change, those are the things that have shaped the current Caribbean crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Lewis, for that context. And now we're going to be focusing on what we can do now for Cuba. Your Excellency.
So thank you very much. Good almost evening, 5 minutes soon. So we really thank you for the opportunity to share with you. And when you brought the idea to our embassy of what can be done or what you could do, I think that what you are doing today is a really important step. Just bringing the topic, just to raise voices and to discuss about it, is one of the most important issues required right now. Because as someone mentioned before, what we are facing and dealing the most is the change and the hidden metaphors in the narratives. So what is really important is to bring the topic, to discuss about it. It's been really enlightening for us as well, having the professors lecture on history. And those insights are remarkable because we are what we have brought from history. This is our roots. And definitely that defines the present and should be the beacon to the future. So we really appreciate also having the opportunity to share this from real witnesses of history. So thank you again for organizing these events. My respects to the Manley family. And in such important date, so we thank you just for bringing the topic of Cuba. I don't have an structured lecture on the topic, just as Professor has excellently presented. I will just bring some ideas for you later to think about and to come more. So, Cuba is facing, as you have already mentioned, a crisis that combines economic, energy, financial, and social challenges. However, this is not a natural crisis. These situations cannot be analyzed in isolation. Must be viewed within the context of more than 6 decades of economic, commercial, and financial blockade imposed by the United States. In particular, the severity of the current situation responds to the intensification of unilateral coercive measures applied during the last month, including restrictions on fuel supplies and extraterritorial sanctions that affect maritime transport, insurance companies, financial institutions, and international suppliers, just to mention a few. Current sanctions directly affect every aspect of our daily lives, with greatest impact on health services, education, trade, industry, causing serious harm to the population. In parallel, the impact is particularly severe in the energy sector. Restrictions on fuel imports and the age of a significant portion of the electricity generation infrastructure have caused an important disruption of the national electricity system. I will mention, just for you to have a more precise idea, some examples of this impact. As I mentioned before, Cuba is unable to purchase diesel and fuel oil required by generators, engines, and power units due to the total blockade of Cuba access to oil and its products. So our people is suffering an average of more than 20 hours of power cuts every day, which affects electricity, of course, as I mentioned, that implies daily life, cooking, access to drinking water, to health services, TV, communications, and other basic services. Life expectancy of children diagnosed with cancer has declined due to the lack of medical devices, technology, equipment, and even suitable treatment, which are beyond our reach at this point. 300 medicines from the basic health list out of the 395 produced in Cuba are in short supply due to the inability to access raw materials and pharmaceutical supplies. And containers of essential goods that have arrived in Cuba from many organizations worth of around $6.3 million have been not able to be distributed completely to their recipients due to the fuel shortages. These are just some examples. We had much more, but I wouldn't like it to make it too long for you. So it is a threat. What we are living is a threat, but not only to Cuba. It's a threat to regional peace, security, and stability. It's a threat to any sovereign state that might be subject to similar aggressive and extraterritorial measures in the future. It is an economic, media, and psychological war, the one that is being waged against our country, instigated and financed from abroad, which seeks to turn the genuine suffering of the people into a weapon against ourselves. As we all know, Cuba is a nation that embraces peace and dialogue. We believe in multilateralism, and we continue to do so. So, in this regard, what I can tell you for sure tonight is that we will continue to defend our independence, dignity, and right to develop our national project, convinced that cooperation and solidarity are more powerful tools than any mechanism of pressure or isolation. We will not ask for permission to exist, and nor will we surrender our sovereignty. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Professor Lewis, for guiding us in those thoughts. I'm not sure who is listening, whether in the room or online, with a solution. But the present moment is all about being keyed into what you can do, and we can do something. Ambassador, you mentioned the solarization. That was one of the things that when I was listening to the briefing from your attaché, the Cuban government, I think, is making sure that all of the schools in Cuba have to convert to solar energy. Obviously, as the Cubans have shown us that when your back is against the wall, you turn your hand, make fashion, as one time we used to do in Jamaica. And we know that the Cubans are very versatile. But I am encouraging those of you with solutions to touch base with the embassy and to not take it for granted that you might not be a part of some solution that exists. So on that note, because of time's sake, I'm going to actually move ahead to Haiti. And originally the plan was to show a film, and I've already decided that that can't happen because, of course, the time will just simply not permit. So I will just say what the whole business of the film was about, and hopefully ties into what we're talking about in terms of, being a solution. It was about last year before last time, that I was in Guyana at the time, and there was a group in Guyana that was an activist group in support of Haiti. And I think he was from the earthquake days. They're at the University of Ghana. But again, never underestimate what groups can do when you come together and you decide to do something. So this group has been helping Haitians practically in small projects, Professor Lewis, as well as sometimes doing what you can, because one cocoa full basket. And while I was there in Ghana, they introduced me to this group in Haiti. This is a platform, a national platform of farmers. Haiti is one of the most politically organized, and I don't mean that by party. I mean civic. Every single community has some kind of I guess what we call them in Jamaica, CBOs, but everyone is attached to some kind of a civic organization. And these farmers had decided, one of the longest standing farming organizations, they call them peasant groups in Haiti, had decided to coalesce a national platform and invite all of the peasant organizations, the farming, in Jamaica call them small farmers. So there's these small farmers all over Haiti. Haiti is divided into departments like Jamaica's into parishes. And so they came together on this one platform and were seeking to basically have a voice, find their voice. And I was asked to help facilitate one of the processes that they didn't seem to be able to get through with. So I started working with this group. And it sucked me in to the point where, I mean, I don't speak Haitian to this day. I think I'm trying to work on my vocabulary every day. But I am on the phone. I think I'm no more in Haiti than I'm in Jamaica. And one of the things that I did to assist this group was, in fact, this film is a documentary of that group, which I directed from Jamaica. I still have not been to Haiti yet. Thankfully, there is all the things that we can do in AI. And I've been working with this group. Their aim is, in 24 months, to increase their membership to 1 million members. And that's like about an eighth, I believe, of the Haitian population. So that's an ambitious goal. But I watched their spirit. Let me explain. I was speaking with Mr. Bruce Golding, and he made a comment to me. He said, in Haiti, there are 220 political parties registered, which means that if all of the gangs were to dissipate tomorrow and they held an election, you don't know that it would work, because you could, with 250 political parties, you could probably get a majority with maybe 3% of the electorate, which would be no mandate. In other words, Haiti is one of the most fragmented places, which is an absolute marvel, because just not so long ago, Aristide won I think it was the greatest landslide in the Caribbean, much bigger than Michael. And to go from that kind of a national unity behind one leader to the place where, according to Mr. Golding, nobody in Haiti can agree that the sun sets in the west. And the one thing that all of those 220 political parties have in common is that they have sworn an oath never to agree on anything at any time, anywhere, for any reason. And within that context, me working with these farmers with no ambitions, apart from just wanting to be left alone to do what they can do and feed. Because Haiti's problems, like Cuba's, after a while you recognize that, listen, man, they're bigger than you and I and everybody. And the name of the game is survival. And the best we can do is to align with the human intention to survive in these places. And so I thought and every single day has become for me another lesson in the Haitian terrain. But we will be, I'm going to have to reschedule that film. We had actually an intention to show that film once a month for the next 24 months while we're working on this expansion of their membership base. And actually today, right now at this very moment, they are showing the Haitian version of that film in Haiti. And the idea was that I would be showing the English version here, and they would be showing the Creole version there. And by the way, putting together a film in 2 languages, thank God for AI, but it was still quite a challenge to execute. But I have to skip the film, but I want part of the proceedings that will go on tonight is I'm going to have a short auction, just 4 pieces, and that will be the break between, because we have a limited time. Here I gave my word with regards to when we would need to leave this space, and so I want to recalibrate and start at 7 o'clock for the evening session, which is the final for the night. And so rather than showing the film, which really was just about, it's a document of this group, how they began, and the whole historical context of Haiti. I look out in social media for the next time we show it, which will probably be next month.
Study War No More is a unique cinematic journey into the Black Empire that reshaped world history and bore the brunt of backlash from the powers of Western imperialism. Step into the movement of the people today, building on the legacy of the Haitian Revolution in the face of the current Napoleonic threat.